Everyone knows the Colosseum, and everyone knows that this part of the Colosseum looks a lot better than this part. So what happened? How and why did half of the greatest amphitheater in the Roman world simply vanish? That sounds like a job for questions about ancient Rome you were afraid to ask in school. I'm Dr. Garrett Ryan, and today we're exploring the 1,000-year history of the Colosseum after the gladiators left. A story of earthquakes, magic, and an enemy far more destructive than any barbarian army. Part 1. The End of the Games. For almost 500 years, the Colosseum was the empire's most impressive and most terrifying arena. Emperor after emperor sponsored spectacles to astonish and delight the Roman people. Exotic animals from the farthest reaches of the known world were hunted with gilded spears. Criminals were devoured by bears. The empire's greatest gladiators dueled on blood-stained sands. Over its half-millennium of use, the Colosseum underwent a long series of renovations. The most important took place in the early 3rd century, when a massive fire destroyed the entire upper deck of seating. It took the emperors 5 years to restore the building, and signs of those hasty repairs are still visible all along the north wall. The spectacles themselves also changed. Unsurprisingly, the most impressive games were held during the empire's heyday. To celebrate his victory in Dacia, the Emperor Trajan celebrated a whopping 123 days of games, in the course of which 5,000 pairs of gladiators fought and 11,000 animals were killed. From the mid-3rd century onward, however, the quality of the games started to slip. The later emperors were poorer and more distracted than their predecessors. They tended to spend most of their time and money far from the city of Rome. It also didn't help that most of the more exciting animals had been hunted to the point of scarcity, and that the price of trained gladiators was always rising. Eventually, the gladiatorial combats stopped altogether. According to a later legend, a heroic monk named Telemachus leapt into the arena and tried to stop a gladiator from killing his opponent. The enraged spectators then stoned the monk to death. On learning of this, the emperor ended the combats. Or so the legend goes. The reality was probably less dramatic. While Christian disapproval was certainly one cause of the decline, the simple fact that the emperors were no longer paying for them seems to have been equally important. Whatever the reason, the last gladiators fought in the Colosseum sometime in the early 5th century. The beast hunts, however, continued. They lasted longer, in fact, than the Western Roman Empire itself. The very last recorded hunts in the Colosseum were held in the year 523, sponsored by the barbarian kings who had succeeded the emperors. But these new kings had little interest in the old games. It was difficult to justify staging them for Rome's steadily shrinking population. And so, after 523, the Colosseum fell silent. Part 2. The Age of Myth. Within a few centuries, all real understanding of the Colosseum's original function was lost. The building was so vast, so complex, that medieval Romans could only explain it with magic. Some claim the Colosseum had been a temple of the sun and had originally been crowned by a vast golden dome. Others thought it had been a temple dedicated to all the gods, and that a gigantic statue of Jupiter had stood in the arena. The strangest legends, however, revolved around the Roman poet Virgil. In medieval legend, Virgil was transformed from a poet into a great magician.
Virgil, it was said, had built the Colosseum in a single night with the help of his demons and used it as a theater for necromancy. This state of confusion and ruin would only get worse. Before we dive into the two great enemies responsible for the Colosseum's final collapse, if you're enjoying this journey back in time, please take a second to subscribe and turn on notifications. It tells YouTube you value this kind of content and really helps the channel grow. Part of this confusion derived from the fact that the Colosseum was already half ruined at the beginning of the Middle Ages, and it would fall apart steadily over the next millennium. Its first great enemy was nature itself. Part 3. The natural enemy. Like any tall masonry structure, the Colosseum was susceptible to seismic damage. But thanks to a simple quirk of geology, parts of the building were especially vulnerable. You see, the Colosseum's massive concrete foundations only go down to solid bedrock on the north side. On the south side of the building, the foundation rests on unstable, waterlogged sediment from an ancient stream. This unstable subsoil acted like an amplifier for seismic shocks. A series of earthquakes, especially a devastating one in 847, rocked the building. While the northern side held firm on its bedrock, the southern side, sitting on that geological jello, began to crack, lean, and collapse. But earthquakes only explain why the south side fell. They don't explain what happened to the stone. And they don't explain why the north side wasn't simply torn down for its materials. To answer that, we have to meet the Colosseum's greatest enemy. And it wasn't an earthquake. It was the Romans themselves.
Part 4. The human enemy.
The building's walls were fashioned from a fine limestone called travertine. Its seats were made of marble. Both of these stones were incredibly attractive to later builders. Marble and travertine are not only easy to reuse, they can also both be burnt in kilns to make lime, the essential ingredient for mortar. The pillaging of the Colosseum stone began even before the final games were staged, and it continued on a vast scale for more than 1,000 years. The Colosseum wasn't just a quarry. For much of the Middle Ages, hundreds of people lived inside the ruinous vaults and passageways. There were houses, complete with courtyards and gardens. There were shops with wooden awnings and storage lofts. There were stables, churches, and at one point even a full-blown fortified palace. Remarkably, many of the medieval Colosseum's inhabitants were the lime burners themselves. Men who spent their days tearing apart the very building in which they were squatting, processing the marble seats into quicklime. Thanks largely to their efforts, the Colosseum became an increasingly inhospitable place. Finally, in 1349, another massive earthquake struck. It was the final blow. It brought down the entire south half of the Colosseum's outer circuit wall, forming a colossal pile of rubble. For the next 4 centuries, this heap, which was commonly referred to as the Colosseum's thigh, built half of the churches of Renaissance Rome. In 1452 alone, a single busy contractor carried off more than 2,500 cartloads of travertine stone from the pile. Part 5. The Surprising Savior. After all these centuries of earthquakes and pillaging, it might seem surprising that anything is left. Which brings us to the final, most important question. Why does the northern half still exist? It survived the earthquakes, yes, because of its stronger foundation. But why wasn't it torn down by scavengers and lime burners, just like the rest? The reason so much remains, remarkably, is that this part of the building was protected by the popes. It just so happens that the Colosseum's north side faced the main processional route connecting the Lateran Palace, the Pope's main residence, to the Vatican. The popes, it seems, deliberately preserved this magnificent half-ruin as a monumental backdrop for their parades. Not every pope was on board. As late as the 16th century, Pope Pius V proposed pulling down the rest of the arena. But most pontiffs, fortunately, insisted on preserving this iconic fragment of Rome's greatest ancient building. So there you have it. We have half a Colosseum today, not despite earthquakes and popes, but in many ways because of them. The earthquakes targeted the south, and the popes protected the north. If you'd like to learn more about the Colosseum, I now offer virtual guided tours exploring the building and the Roman games. Visit toldstone.com to learn more. And now I have a question for you. What historical building or mystery would you like to see us solve next? Let me know your ideas in the comments below. I read all of them. In the meantime, as always, thanks for watching.